pretty insane, isn't it? That is the sound and the viewfinder of this new Sony A1 camera with me just holding down the shutter and letting those 30 frames a second fly. My name is Matt Kloskowski. Welcome to the latest video. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna do a few things. First, I want to show you, I'm just going to talk, this is first impression. I got the camera yesterday. This was my first outing with it. I usually do something 4 to 6 weeks after the camera's out, and then something, maybe 6 months, because I think feelings change about gear and things as you use it more. So, but this is literally first impression about one thing: frame rate. I'm going to do another video on the bird eye autofocus as well, but this is just frame rate. Talk to you about how we get that frame rate. And then also I'm going to share 2 videos, one at shooting raw 50 megapixels and then one also shooting in crop mode. So I want you to see some examples of both of them. So first let's jump in to how do you get that frame rate? How do you get that 30 frames per second? Because there are a few prerequisites there. Got a couple of notes here. And the one thing I am going to also say, because I know the questions, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on this camera already, and I know the questions come out. So here's the deal, guys. I'm just talking about Sony. I'm a Sony shooter. I'm not going to change. Okay. I'm actually a Sony artisan of imagery. And I'm an educator at my website at matk.com. I'm not changing cameras. So a lot of videos that you will see out there are from people that are getting 6 and 7 cameras sent to them a week. So they're trying all these different things out. And as social media tends to do, there's like a manufactured war. Okay. I don't think there's a war for most people watching as is me. It's like I have the brand that I have and I'm not going to sell it off the moment another manufacturer comes out with something that I want. And then 6 months later, another one comes out and sell all that stuff. Most of us are not going to do that. We don't get to use 7 different cameras all the time. So this is just coming to you from a Sony perspective, okay? And from a Sony perspective, from me being a Sony shooter, A7R4, A9, these frames per second is pretty darn cool. But a couple things that we have here, prerequisites. So one of them is going to be you can't have your focus mode in tracking. Okay, so there's a couple of things. We have focus mode, all right, and then we have focus area. Focus mode is AFC, so you have to be set to AFC, continuous focus, okay? And then your focus area, we get things like wide, we get zone, single point, and then as we're choosing focus area, we also have an option to choose tracking. Tracking is when you're going to try to track a subject, which also happens in just regular wide and zone areas as well. But what tracking does is if that subject goes behind something, it'll try to still track it and pick it back up when it reemerges from wherever it is. I've done extensive tests over the years with both my R4 and my A9. I actually never use tracking mode. So that's not a problem for me. In my bird and wildlife photography, it has never been a problem. In fact, I actually like the results I get better from not using tracking mode. So, but you're going to have reduced frames per second, not a lot, but reduced if you're going to use the tracking mode. Your priority in the AFC has to be set to release. Okay, so there's another option, which I believe the default is balanced emphasis. It's got to be set to release to get that 30 frames a second. I won't go into the tech of the whole thing other than to say, again, you're not talking like 30 frames per second goes down to 20. You're just talking a minute difference in there. But again, to get the full 30, you got to be there. Your electronic shutter, got to be using the electronic shutter, and the shutter speeds, top out is some crazy shutter number, and I believe the bottom is probably 200, I think it's 250th of a second is the bottom. Certain lenses, the XD linear motor, so I'm using the 100 to 300 in these examples, so there's certain autofocus mechanisms in the lenses. And then also raw format. So compressed RAW. There is an uncompressed option there. They're bigger files, so you've got to be doing that in the compressed RAW format. Again, that 30 is not going to go down to 15 because you switched to uncompressed RAW. It's still crazy fast, but if you want to get that full 30, you got to be there. Okay, so from here, I'm going to show you 2 videos that I took out in the field. Again, Sony A1, I'm using the 100 to 400 Sony GM lens on there, and I believe I even have the 1.4 teleconverter on there as well. The first video is going to be full frame, 50 megapixels raw photos. I'll then take a break and then I'll show you the second one, which is going to be crop mode. But here's the kind of things I want you to look for. Number one, watch how long you can shoot. Two, I'm using the CF Express cards. Watch when the buffer fills. It's pretty interesting to see how many frames a second you're still getting as that buffer starts to choke a little bit from all the photos. The frames a second, I think, rival still many other cameras out there. And this is with a buffer that is filling. And then from there, I want you to watch when I stop, and you'll be able to tell when I stop. I want you to watch, there's anywhere from 120 to 150 photos. I want you to see how quickly it clears those photos off the buffer, and you can start shooting, 30 frames a second again. So pretty interesting, but let's go take a look at that first video here. So, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. It's crazy, crazy fast. A couple of takeaways for me, and I had mentioned this before the video, is to see not only what 30 frames a second looks like, but also to see how fast that buffer clears and how many frames a second you're still able to shoot even as the buffer is starting to fill. How many frames a second you're still able to get out of that. That to me is fairly game changing. I've got photos of the bird. I don't know if it's eyelids or whatever they call them on birds, but not like I've got photos before where you've got the eyelid of the bird down. I've got actual photos like going down, down, back up, like it's crazy. So let's go to the second video here, which is going to be, so I'm in crop mode now. Okay, but here's the thing. I had it in crop mode, but I also had it in JPEG. So I'm in RAW plus JPEG, but I'm in RAW crop mode, which is 21 megapixels. So I'll go ahead and share that video here. And again, you're gonna what the biggest difference you're gonna see is how much longer I'm able to shoot without that buffer starting to fill up. So there you have the second example there. So to me, again, the big takeaway is just how much longer you're able to shoot in that crop mode. A couple things, I think I mentioned it before, but I am using the CF Express card. I figured it was a very difficult bullet to bite because they're not cheap. Figured you're buying an A1, why don't I just go over the top and throw a CF Express card on there and the Sony CF Express card reader, which still isn't cheap. But a couple of things about that. It's not necessarily going to get you more frames per second. What it's going to do is keep you shooting longer without that buffer filling up because it's able to offload the photos much faster. And when you're transferring them to your computer, when you get the right CF Express card reader, I transferred 27 gigabytes over to my computer in less than a minute. So it's pretty cool too. One last thing, which is if you want more information about the A1, I'm going to refer you over to Mark Gaylor's Sony Alpha channel. Mark has a great YouTube channel where he does a lot of Sony information on there, and he's done a video on the A1. I wouldn't even attempt to do it because he's done so complete of a video on it. But here's the thing I really like about Mark's videos, and that is he's a shooter. You get great, good, concrete, no nonsense advice, but he's not manufacturing some shock value headlines to manufacture wars between all of this stuff. And he's not taking the camera out to his backyard and photographing a tree or a table or a focus chart or something like that. He's a shooter. He's a great photographer. So not only do you get great information, but you also get to see some really amazing photographs and just get some real world advice along the way. So hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for some more videos on this camera as I get to dive in and use it a little bit more in the future here.